So a couple of months ago, we received this really awesome laser cutter from Atomstack. This is the Glacier. This is also a bit more of a dedicated video on the Glacier. I want to showcase the stuff that I've built with it so far, how it's been holding up over the past couple of months, because this has become my main machine over the past couple of months as well. So if you haven't seen the previous video where I set the whole thing up, I put the B4 enclosure around it and test out the air purification system, then definitely check that one out as well. In general though, this has been one of the more capable machines I've ever received. We have the water cooling system, which keeps that 120 watts cool and actually sustains the power throughout the laser cutting process. We have the quality of life features like the autofocus system, of course the screen that allows us to interact with the laser cutter by turning off certain features. I really like turning off the fire detection system because it sometimes sets off mid laser cut and I just want to prevent that from happening. I'll monitor the situation myself. And what's really nice about this Atomstack Glacier is that it supports both Lightburn but also Atomstack's own software. So if you don't want to spend the money on Lightburn, for example, you could just use the Atomstack software and you can get around with that perfectly fine. Now, having a really capable laser cutter like this doesn't just help in the more advanced projects, it also helps in really simple projects that I do behind the scenes and don't really showcase to the audience over here. So I have this massive storage crate issue, for example. I buy these plastic crates in the store and they break every couple months and I think it's just a waste of money. So eventually I took this rack system, I measured up some dimensions of it, went on to make a case, got myself the design files for a little box, and then cut those out on 9mm thick OSB. Of course, that's totally overkill for a system like this. I absolutely agree with that, but it seems so I have the laser cutter anyway, and seems so the wooden crates that you can buy in the store are, I think, 3 times as expensive as the crates that are built just here. It was one of the most simple things I've ever solved, but it's solved. So to do some quick math on that, you can get about 4 boxes out of a single sheet of OSB material. The OSB material costs around 20 euros. I think I got it on sale for 15. And it takes 20 minutes to cut out a single box on this laser cutter. So that's about 4 euros per box, and the boxes I bought in the store for 14 euros were made out of plastic, so that's a big improvement over here. Not saying that this will be a great return on investment if you started producing boxes, of course, because you need to keep an eye on the system. It's not like a 3D printer, you can turn it on and just leave it. You need to make sure that everything is okay. But it is very good at batch processing, and that's also one of the areas that I see a machine like this performing really quite well. If you have, for example, an Etsy store and you're doing batch work, then something like this with a 120 watt module can really help in that regard because it's a lot faster than the other laser cutters on the market. It's also a lot more sustainable because we have that water cooling unit attached to it, which makes it last a lot longer than all of the air cooled units. Now, some other stuff that I've been considering as return on investments is, for example, designing something with aluminium extrusions and then selling the laser cut parts, for example, the laser cut multiplex sheets on the concept desk setup build. So I'm not sure if you get that off the ground, to be quite honest with you, because it's a very niche use case and it's a very niche way of getting a return on investment. Probably the most useful way to get something like this going is just engraving custom things on custom items that people can buy for people's birthdays, right? Which subsequently also brings us to the IR module. You can actually switch out the laser head for a different laser head, and it has this quick release system at the side for the water cooling system, and I didn't expect it to work this well, but it actually works surprisingly well. It doesn't even drip or anything like that. You disconnect it, you put the IR module on there and you can start engraving metals, for example. In general, I was a little bit lost on the IR module because I don't do a whole lot of engraving. I try to make my builds as useful as possible, but one of the useful things I have found for it is having useful engravings on the gear that you have. So for example, I bought this new bike, the Rose Hobo. Now, just like any other bike, the seat post doesn't really have any markings on there for at which position it's at. If you just do that with a pen, it doesn't last too long and it becomes very messy. Now, the seat post is somewhat round, of course, so it is quite difficult to actually engrave on this, just because the laser height needs to be perfectly set, otherwise it's out of focus. So in the end, this is not the cleanest result, but at least I know which height my seat post is at, and it's not too obvious to where it's become an eyesore, but I'm still figuring this one out. What's really nice about this super high powered laser though is that it's still a diode laser, but it can cut similar materials to a CO2 laser, so for example acrylic. Now, a little while ago I designed a laser cut this lamp, which has been pretty awesome, but it hasn't really lasted all too long. The design is way too heavy. And in this video I'd like to redo it and use some old wood that I had laying around in the garden, but also cut some acrylic because I'm really interested to see how that works out. So I actually have some of these laser specific acrylic sheets laying around which have foil on both sides. So these sheets are 30 by 30 centimeters and I accounted for that in the design process. Something else I really like the look of is threaded rods, and I was actually quite surprised by how cheap these threaded rods actually are. Bought these in a hardware store and I wasn't yet sure what I was going to use them for, but wanted to put 4 of these inside of this lamp as the main structure. I actually really appreciate design furniture that is just super simplistic. I see that with the artifact couch that I have in here, the most simple design you could come up with, but it also looks really decent because of that simplicity. And so I'd like to implement that same philosophy into the lamp as well. Seems so it's going to be next to the couch. So in this case, the bulb or the light itself is actually shining upwards instead of down. And that's something I learned on my prior builds, because when lights are shining down, they become more practical essentially. When they're shining up, it becomes more of a cozy vibe. This is not necessarily the nicest wood to use for a project like this, but that also makes it somewhat interesting. So for this project, I'm using the Atomstack software because I wanted to test it out. You need to make sure that you put the laser power on 100% down at the bottom over here, and then you can input the 100% at the top over there as well. If you accidentally put it on 40 watts, it will just limit the output to 40 watts by disabling some of the laser emitting sources. That means it essentially becomes a 40 watt module. That's very useful for doing fine engravings, right? Because a 40 watt module has a lot finer of a point than a 100 watt module. Now, something I would really like to see as a standard on laser cutters is some form of camera module. You'll see it on 3D printers all the time, right? 3D printer always has a little camera module, so you can check up on the print from wherever you are essentially. Having a camera module in the laser cutter is really useful because you could sit in a different room and then protect your eyesight even better than having laser cutting goggles on. As for the base of the lamp, I'd like that to be a little heavier so the lamp is actually stable when it's standing on its own there. And the laser cut bottom pieces are essentially exactly the same as the top pieces, but I put some concrete in there just to weigh it down and let that dry overnight. So if you enjoyed the video so far, then definitely consider leaving a like, leaving a comment, subscribing to the channel. Maybe also check out the Patreon page. I upload pretty much all the designs I make over there, so you can check those out, make them for yourself. Maybe adjust them a little bit if you need to. And all of the proceeds from the Patreon page go directly back into the channel and it really helps me produce better builds. I noticed when the light was standing on its side over here, it almost looks like one of those hydroponics bays, and I'd really like to build something like that, just to grow some plants inside of the house, for example. Would be a really awesome project to do. So I went to the Bamboo Lab and I 3D printed some spaces for this design. I'm hoping that through this design we'll get a mixture of colors, so the light will shine through the splits in the middle, and it will also shine through the glass at the top. As for the panel that actually mounts the lights, we're using this RGB spotlight that I bought off of Amazon. I used a couple of them in the fabrication test at the build, which worked out really quite nicely and it's super simple. So I laser cut this panel out, I popped the spotlight in there, and it's not the cleanest looking thing because we can still see the wires when we actually look from underneath it, but because it's such a small light, you're not actually likely to see that. So I've never actually laser cut acrylic before, and you do need a specific type, which is cast acrylic. This is specifically built for laser cutting, so it should be fine. I was quite surprised by how easy this went and how awesome the result was as well. I did use a deburring tool to get rid of some of the edges. Seems that they were a little bit sharp. So it's really awesome that this machine can cut through acrylic, and I'll probably be using that feature a lot more in future projects as well. Opens up a lot of possibilities for awesome build projects. It's pretty cool that we can actually change the design of the light even without reconstructing any of the parts, right? We can just orient them in a different way. For example, putting the acrylic sheets in the middle and then putting the other wooden panels over the top and at the bottom. I do think the design would have looked a little bit better if we only used 2 rods or 3 threaded rods. That way it doesn't look as heavy as it is right now. During the build process, I also came to the conclusion that we could create really intriguing molds with this laser cutter, right? So we could create a mold for concrete, for example, out of melamine, and then create a concrete version of this lamp. Let me know in the comment section if that's something you would like to see. In the meantime, I hope this video gave you some inspiration and I hope it helped you out. And hopefully, see you in the next video.